Hi, I'm the host of the STO Smokers Lounge. I'm here to tell you about Anchor, the perfect app that you can use right now to start your own podcast network. You can broadcast right now. All you got to do is download the app, whether you have a phone, iPad, or even a laptop or desktop. You can right now download Anchor or go to Anchor FM right now and start recording and have your stuff broadcasted over multiple platforms such as Spotify. So go to Anchor today and start your podcast career like I have, because trust me, I love me some Anchor. Well, what's going on, people? Welcome to the Smokers Lounge, brought to you by This Ova Podcast, powered by Anchor. Yep, we're back once again. I'm your host, Kavanaugh, a.k.a. the Porn Rap Star. So before we go into this deep dive for this episode, huge announcement. The This Ova Podcast is back on Podbean. Episode 8 is up as we speak. So if you're hearing this, go over to podbean.com and look up Smoke This Over. Or you can find it on Spotify or any podcast, even iHeart, to listen to the current episode now, episode 8. Let's talk about some wild stuff. From WandaVision to the elephant in the room, that Martin Luther King's dream also entailed the black economy, Black Wall Street, as well as ass eating. So yes, I cover the spectrum. So yes, it's back. Like I said, this will be dropping weekly on Podbean, powered by Podbean. Also, as you know, I'm an adult film star as well as a rapper, hip hop artist, music artist, whatever you want to call. So yeah, that's right. I'm in two spots. You feel me? So if you want to see me do my thing on the adult film side, or you want to hear my music and see what I'm talking about musically, go to allmylinks.com/porn rap star. That's allmylinks.com/porn rap star. Also, you can find all my social media. So you can follow me there from Twitter to TikTok to Instagram to Facebook. Oh, yeah. Also, I have a new shout out for this week. Freelabel.net. I now have an account on there. And I talked to a representative who was checking on me, who was very surprised that I was able to use every bit of this site. And I'm working on some things, so check out freelabel.net. It's like it helps you be like your own label, literally, to the T. I get plenty of plays. You monetize your music. And also, they push your stuff. They actually do promote you on their Instagram and Twitter as well. So it is good to get you, to get an account. Freelabel.net. All right. So now, as you know, for some of you people who might have tuned in to the Smoke This Over and you came over here to the Smokers Lounge, this here, I don't jump and do a bunch of things. I talk about one thing. I try to, this platform is probably more political than anything else, with some fanfare, little crazy shit here and there mixed in between. But, I want to give you something on the Smokers Lounge to where when you listen to it, after you finish listening to it, it makes you think. It makes you ponder shit. It makes you look at things in a certain way. Period. So what I'm about to deep dive into is about to be very, very, very deep. little bit controversial because I don't think anyone ever tapped into this. And it hit me. I try to think differently from anybody else. I try to think outside the box. The reason why, because that's just how I am. You know, I was never one to go with the crowd or think like everyone else. So, now, with that being said, the name of this episode is Classism Became Racism. Now, I know a lot of people probably, when this drops and I start promoting it, they're going to be like, what the fuck do you mean classism is racism? Actually, classism became racism, actually. See, now, we're going to treat this like a story or what have you. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you what I just told you. Y'all know what that means. If you've been in school, that's old school shit. If you from my time period, that's how they said when it came to when you wrote an essay or what have you. Well, anyway, now, the reason why I say classism equal to racism, because the one thing that you can say about black people is that, and actually, no, I'm going to start like this. My granddaddy said, the way you get brought into something is always the way you're going to be perceived or looked. So that means if someone makes you a manager, but the person that made you the manager do not show and make the people that is your employees respect you, they're not going to show you respect. That's why a lot of times it's hard for when somebody becomes a manager around people that they work with and they came up working with, because it's that respect factor. Because motherfucker, you was me a month ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard for people to separate that and look at that differently. So with that being said, African Americans was brought onto this continent as slaves. We was brought to the West Indies. Schematics, it doesn't matter to me whether it was West Indies or whether it was the Americas. Damn it, we was brought the fuck over here in chains. As slaves. In society, a slave is below a peasant. See, you ever paid attention to the Middle Ages and the classes and how Europe classified everybody? Slave was lower than the peasant for the most part. Okay. Now, so we was brought over here as slaves. There's no class. Why is class? Because slave was a term of class, of human being within that civilization. That was one of the tiers, if you want to call it, or whatever, or caste, or I guess what they call it, a caste system. That's the new term, as they call it now. Caste system. But yeah, because in Europe you had the nobility, you had the knights, then you have the peasants, then you have the slaves or servants. So with that being said, in order to understand what I mean by classism and when I bring it to you, we got to go back. We got to go back to, first of all, how the fuck Africans end up being in the scope of actually becoming slaves. See, no one never really talks about that. You don't ever hear no one. In every video you hear, about slavery this, slavery that, but no one never ever really talked about the pinpoint of, well, how the fuck did Africans become slaves? People said it, but people just they once again I said you gotta look at totality, you gotta look at the whole thing. So what I'm about to do is give you a scope that you didn't think on. Now, Bartholomew lost the Caucasus. Who is he? Well, he's a priest. He's a Spanish priest who was a confidant of the Portugal king. At this time, you had Europe, many of the superpowers of different countries, expanding. And everyone figured out about going west, going to the Americas, preferably South America and so on, so forth. Those islands or what have you. Well, before there was African slaves, it was the Indians that were slaves. See, understand, it's Native Americans. When they came over and they fucked with the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Incas, what was left, they enslaved and made them slaves, made them mine the gold, made them pick cotton, made them do this, and the third. But the problem was, them fuckers live in the Americas. And they're very rebellious. And not all of them are enslaved. So you got some that would escape. Many of them would escape and they would disappear in the mountains. They would disappear in the jungles. They would blend in with other tribes, what have you. So they were losing workers, if they consider workers. Because hold on, let me make this clear before we go any further. They put in Google the labor problem. That's the actual term that they use in Google. The Indian labor problem. Okay, that tickled me when I saw that shit. All right. So it was a problem because now what you would have these people intended to be, you can't keep them. So Mr. Bartholomew de la Casa suggested to the Portugal king, why not use Africans? These are the reasons why. They're not from there. They're from Africa. They can't blend in. If they escape, where they going to escape to? And you can probably get a lot of them. And you ain't got to worry about dealing with the Indians. Portugal king from there start raiding the Ivory Coast, which started a trend that went all through Europe. Now, let's put a pin in that. Classism. The first thought was, we're going to grab Africans and make them slaves, to be our slaves. We're going to grab them from Africa, take them to the Americas, and make them work for us for free, what have you, complete servitude. The reason why Africans became slaves because it was a business decision, not race. Business decision. We can't use the Indians because you can't use the Indians because they can get away too easily and we can't catch them, we can't find them. We're going to use the Africans. Slaves. Once again, slaves class is the lowest class. That is below a peasant. Meaning in them days, I'd rather be poor and destitute than to be a slave. That is what it was. Now I take the pen back out. We move forward. As this phenomenon grows, of course, England becomes one of the main proprietor of slaves. Germany, I can go down the list, but England was one of the main ones because we talk about it was mostly England that pretty much had the colonies, right? All right. Now, English people who was coming over here that has tobacco and cotton that need to be picked, they're used to, it went from, okay, we need them to do labor to now we can make money selling slaves. Once again, class. They're slaves. They're less than nothing. This had nothing to do with color. I'm about to bring in and let you know when color falls into the spectrum. Because this whole time this is going on, this is not just England. You have Germany, you have France. Because the people that colonized Africa was also colonizing America and was bringing slaves over here. So let's make this clear. All of Europe who felt that their society was better, that was going to Africa anyway, was grabbing slaves. So now, as generations progress, your slaves are black or Africans. You get what I'm saying? So when your slave class becomes a certain color for the most part or period, guess what? Now I associate slave with black. Uncivilized. Most slaves, they look at them as uncivilized. Black. Uncouth. Black. Savage. Black. You feel me? That's where the color come in. That's how classism turned into racism. Just that quick. Just like that. Because they was raiding Africa. So let's just take, for example, if Bartholomew never said shit and they continue to do Indians, then would there be racism towards Africans? Once again, we was brought over here as slaves. Our purpose to come over here was to be slaves. They raided Africa to be slaves. What was over in Africa? Black people. Thus, the color of a slave was black. Thus, the lowest denominator in civilization, a slave, was black. And guess what? Classism became racism. See, that's the one thing that people don't understand. The way that we was brought to this country pretty much sealed it for us. Because we were the second most in abundance race-wise that came over here. Before the Chinese, before anyone else, they brought us over for the most part. You didn't hear China had a colony over in the West Indies. Spain, Portugal, the strongest empires in Europe had colonies in the West Indies. That was their whole thing, to expand. That was the point. That's what they brought us over here for. Pick their cotton. Now, as years progress, You have white people who, from day one, because they were the ones that was the conquerors when they came over here to the colonies, to America, they were able to build generation wealth before our asses even touch soil. So you got six. So by the time we the sixth generation slave, they're 15 generations in wealth. Yeah. Think about that. Think about that. So before I'm going to take a break, and I just want to sit here and remind you people, yo, are you trying to do a podcast, but you don't have the equipment, you don't have the money, you don't have everything you need that you see Joe Buttons and everybody else got? Well, good. Don't worry about that, man. Don't worry about that, man. Well, sir, whoever's listening, let me tell you what you do. If you got a phone, go to the App Store, download Anchor right now. If you want to, pause my shit and come back. Nah, fuck that. Don't pause me. Wait till we're finished. Go to your app store and go download Anchor right now, and you can start your own podcast today from your phone. You don't need a headphone. All you need is just a little bit of time. Hell, you can do it while you're in the toilet. You can do it while you're driving. You can do it while don't do it while you're at work, because you're going to end up getting fired. But you might could if your boss is cool with it. But either way, you can do your own podcast like I'm doing. Trust me, Anchor. So download Anchor today, and guarantee you'll be happy. Also, the smoke is back. Episode 8 is up right now on podbean.com. Smoke This Over, the podcast, the main podcast, is back up right now. I'm talking about WandaVision. I'm talking about Cutthroat City, a new release that was on Netflix. Also, I'm talking about, getting your ass ate out. You know what I'm saying? Plus politics, plus on top of that, the verses with Keisha Cole and Ashanti, as well as many other different things. And the name of this one is The Dream Was Black Wall Street. That's right. Martin Luther King, he just won't talk about equality as in black and white. No, he was talking about equality as in green, baby. Check out my pod. Smoke This Over. Now, back to what I was saying, generational wealth. So you had generations of white people, children, kids, grandparents, where have you seen black men and women be slaves, be belittled, be treated like shit, beat, hung, this, that, and third. So, once again, they're slaves, a.k.a. nigga, chickaboo, whatever you want to say. And we are above them. Even the poorest white person was above them. Once again, class. The slave owners was that of nobility. That's your nobility. The broke white people, that was your peasants. And guess who the slaves were? Black people. So your first two tiers are white. And for generations, they seen blacks as slaves. The lowest denomination in civilization. Not hard to associate slave with black. Not hard to associate lowest denomination of human being, black. Once again, how you was brought over here is how you're gonna be perceived. That's why we catch more hell than any other brown race. I do not care whether you Chinese, Hispanic, whatever. Y'all don't catch hell like we do. Y'all don't. Trust me, y'all don't. So, back to give you a little bit more knowledge to get my point to where I'm heading to. So now, we get to the revolution, the Constitution. All men created equal, not slaves. Why? Once again, laws of domination. Why would we give them rights? The Southern ones, they was like, no, if that means they can vote. That means they this, they got that. Once again, why would I give a slave any ability to do anything? Just so happen that slave is black. Trust me, if you look at it, we had the longest period of captivity as far as slavery than any other fucking race, people, what have you, of slavery. Sorry, kiss my ass. I dare someone to show me different. Now, see, I hope y'all keeping up with me. You know what I'm saying? I hope y'all keeping up with me. Seriously. Now, so we move further along till we get to the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln. We're no longer slaves. Reconstruction era. Now let me explain to you what Reconstruction era was. It was ground zero for us. Now let me explain to you. I wanted to paint this picture before I go any further. If anybody that loves to watch documentaries, I suggest you should go to Houston, go to the History Channel right now. The men that built America. At this time, you had Vanderbilt, who was pretty much he dominated the railroads. Trains. Before it was horse, trains took the place of that. There's how you had the Pony Express. You had stagecoach. Fuck that. They started using trains. Steam engines. You feel where I'm coming from? You had Carney, who was the man of steel. You had Rockefeller. I think he was oil. And then, of course, J.P. Morgan, banking. Okay. Now, also at the same time, during the Reconstruction era, black people had human rights, the same rights as that of white people. This is very important. We ran and won races to get into the Senate, into the House of Republic, to get into government, not just city. We talking about city, state, even federal. Yes, you had black senators from South Carolina people. It's real. Black people was becoming rich. They were becoming landowners. They was making money. Think about Tulsa, Wilmington. You had an all-black all-black city council. What happened during the Reconstruction era that changed the course of history for us? Before I get into that, one, it set us back. If we was able to somehow navigate and get through that without, or if white people didn't fuck with it, we would have had generational wealth. We would have had generational wealth. We might would have had Martin Luther King was president, not just the human, the man that was a centerpiece of civil rights. No, he might have been president. Running against Malcolm X. You feel where I'm coming from? We might have had ownership of some of the industries that white people have right now. Because at that point, we was considered equal. That was the point. Once we was released of our shackles, we was supposed to have been equal to them. Let me tell you what happened. Back to classism. You have the sons, daughters of Former slave owners. Former slave owners. White people who family was poor like a motherfucker. They never came up. Seeing black people, hold on, slaves, former slaves that happen to be black, prosper as if they were never slaves. Here come the Ku Klux Klan. Here come what happened in Tulsa. Here come what happened in Wilmington. Voter intimidation. We went from we actually got a seat in the Senate to we can't even vote. We got to drink from a different fountain and sit in the back of the bus. Why? I cannot see a slave equal to me. I can't, boy, my daddy used to own you. 10 years ago, my daddy whooped you. Seeing black people as slaves for that long a period of time embedded in the mind of white people that we were less than. When the government did not step in to help black people during the Reconstruction era, the reason why, because Grant didn't give a shit. He was more concerned about Western expansion, getting rid of the Indians. He didn't give a fuck about the niggas. They saw us as less than because we was brought to this country as less than, as slaves. The Chinese came over here on their own accord. They might have got, white man might have got over on them, but they came over on their own accord. The Hispanics came over their own accord. They always over here. Mexico, come on. They're on California and Texas. Here's a thought. When did the black people, we didn't own shit over this motherfucker. Actually, we couldn't even go back to Africa. Every last one of y'all have an ancestral home. We don't. Why I say that? Because can't no black person sit here and tell me where your ancestral home is. Period. Not what tribe you come from, not what area of Africa, unless you do the DNA test. But the point I'm trying to make is, once again, is that because we were treated that way, because we were slaves, we was brought over here as slaves, we were the lowest tier within civilization, or what you would consider I don't even know what the word, I can't even find the word. We was at the bottom of the food chain, per se. Because of that, when it came time for us to rise, that's why them fuckers couldn't let us rise, because they couldn't see a slave being on the same level as them and doing better than them. Because they're so used to seeing us as slaves. It's just that the classism turned to racism, because just so happened the slave class was Africans, black people, Negroes. That's why they say our country. That's why they say my country. We're going to get our country back. This, that, because they feel that because they brought us over here on these boats, these nice ass boats, and these nice chains. Yeah, a few of us died, so what? We made it comfortable for you. We can't help that some of y'all are weak. That's how they thinking. that we owe them something, that this is their country. This is actually not even their country, but that's a conversation for another day. The point I'm trying to make is that this is what I say classism turned to racism because of one business decision. One business decision by the King of Portugal from a suggestion from a Spanish priest, Mr. Lacacas. Made a suggestion, why not use Africans? A business decision. It wasn't that they saw black people and said, them motherfuckers ain't shit. I hate niggas. Let's enslave them. No, it was, we tired of dealing with these damn Indians. They keep running. Let's go get some niggas. Why don't you go get the niggas? Since you tired of the Indians, go get the niggas. Shit, hell, there's a whole continent of them. That's why there was a slave trade. That's why we spent so many decades and years as slaves. Even after England banned slave trade. That's the reason why we are a young country. Understand, we're a young country. England, the rest of them, they're ahead of us when it comes to race shit. There's racism in them countries, but it's not as blatant as ours. And it systematically is not being used to hold down theirs as it is like it is over here. The system was set up because of one reason, a business fucking decision that changed the course of history. And like I said before, now we're coming back to the Reconstruction era. We're getting there. We're starting to get generational wealth because you got the Blue Ivies and the Kanye West babies and all them. Think about it. My parents didn't know anything about any black celebrity generational wealth shit. We're now getting the opportunity to gain our generational wealth. That's why I say it's going to take us another millennium. It might take us another 100 years. That's when we get our generational wealth up, when we get that black economy up, when we get that piece of our pie up, that's when we'll be equal. Because trust me, it's black and white, but it's more about green. Because the one thing that the people in power respect, the government, businesses, what have you, what they respect is your buying power and the money that you have. So I tell people out there right now, if you're a black man and you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, do it. Do it. It doesn't matter what, just do it. So, in closing, that's my explanation of why classism turned to racism. Because the whole thing of it was the original reason why black people became slaves was because the Native Americans were just too fucking feisty for the fucking Portugals. It was a business decision made by a king to keep his empire making money. And then it caught on to Europe. And because it was so easy to grab Africans, because there was so much of us, that the slave class ended up being our black asses. Thus, the racism. Because the association of slave was black. The association of lowest class was black. Lowest part of the civilization totem pole, black, because we were slaves. We didn't come over here on our own accord. We didn't come over here on a boat like the Italians. No, we came over here on a boat tied up like animals. I hope I taught you something. I hope you don't want it. That's why I say, I think when people understand that and the thought of Black people, people of brown is down here and we're here because, that's just the class thing. It's a PSD from slavery. It's a PSD from the European expansion because that is what PSD is. And PSD, believe it or not, can span generations, my friend. Believe it or not. Because what are these white people teaching their children? They lower than you. We better than them. We ain't like them. They're nasty. They yeah. They this, they that. They hip hop. Talk about shit. They smoke weed. They drink this. The reason why they say that, you want to know why? Because at the end of the day, it's just something that carried over from the day where Bartholomew de las Casas said to the Portugal king, well, if you tired of them Indians, why don't you go get them Africans? Life is a learning experience. What's the point of experience? You ain't learning anything. Smoke that over.